take it away.
Yeah. So honestly, I know this isn't about a real person, but that lady was like kind of my hero. I was like, the older I get, the more radical I become. And like, I just leaned in really heavy to like that whole vibe. So this film covers a lot of heavy topics like the horrors of overhunting, the meat industry, the brutalization of animals for human benefit, and more. We see this horror represented in the overall disrespect they like people specifically like in this film and also like throughout colonialism have for other creatures of this planet and the planet itself, and this is highlighted throughout the film in a way that I think was really impactful, and I thought it was executed really well. So while we aren't shown the consequences of the human impact on a planet in any large scale way, we are shown a small sample of the damage that the brutality of humanity is capable of, as well as like the disturbing way in which that brutality and violence can be normalized under the guise of civilization and religion. That there is a system in which powers that be intentionally monsterize or demoralize or dehumanize whatever is categorized as some subhuman or not human for financial benefit. And the separation and justification of this murder and abuse done unto animals by humans with this guise that just because we think they don't have sentience, we think they don't have souls, is pretty commonplace. I think even within like American society, like I know lots of people who are like, you're upset because your cat died. Is like, yeah, it's like a part of my family, you jerk. Like, what do you mean? Of course I'm upset. Or like things like that where it's like they really just don't, there's an inherent disrespect for animals that just stems from colonialism. And that is like really messed up. So, and it really just like spreads across this planet like a literal disease, as colonization and westernization has. The reality being that humans have reshaped this entire planet in irreparable ways that extend past the damage of any other invasive species that has ever been here. And that we've justified with euphemisms like innovation and progress. Ultimately, the movie sums up the thesis of the Ghouls quite nicely, that people are trash and that people are parasites. We forget too often that we are just also animals, creatures that live on this planet, that depend on the planet to live, just like anything else. What I really loved about this film is it really just made you root for the main character who protects the creatures that can't protect themselves by murdering the people who commit those atrocities. So as Gabe was saying, it's like a lot of times we're like, we're not pro murder. We're not. But this was an instance where you're like, I get it though. Yeah. Go ahead, you know. And while the main character is arguably like pretty strange, quirky, and somewhat unhinged, you really couldn't help but like root for her throughout the entire film. I love that the film specifically chose that angle for it, and that the whole like what was demonized was not her. Or like her little ragtag group of people. Like it was really, they were not quiet about being like, do you see what they're doing? Like these people over here that are being murdered because they should. So why was this lady so upset about the hunting in her community? There are a lot of very good reasons for this, and I did some research specifically about hunting and overhunting, and the inherent difference between hunting for survival and hunting for recreation, and how that's largely impacted the environment. There are many angles I could have taken for this episode, from how the meat industry treats the animals that we consume in mass, to the extent of the extinction that has taken place as a result. But I've chosen the latter to focus on for this episode, and hopefully we'll get to explore this topic further as we explore more eco-horror, or as we continue like just with our show in general. Essentially, hunting past the means of necessity is a disruption of our ecosystem and is devastating because of that. And it's ultimately very unsustainable. It impacts much more than just the animals when people disrupt the natural flow of nature through overhunting of the animals. Even the National Science Foundation outlines the ways in which overhunting has impacted trees and other plants in an article titled "Fruits of the Forest Gone, Overhunting of Large Animals Has Catastrophic Effects on Trees." This article specifically covers the issue within Thailand, but the information covered is applicable to any and all ecosystems in which hunting has impacted them. Overhunting of animals affects the entire forest. While the loss of these animals is concerning for species conservation, now researchers at the University of Florida have shown that overhunting can have widespread effects on the forest itself. Overhunting leads to the extinction of the dominant tree species, Melusia horsefieldi, or the Melusa beech, with likely cascading effects on the other forest biota. So the article continues to kind of outline the way in which the hunting of large animals limits the seed dispersal from the trees, and the disruption, how that impacts every area of the forest. So from impacting the literal size of the forest habitat to impacting the types of plants that can develop throughout it. Ultimately, there's this sense of urgency that exists when it comes to limiting the amount of hunting that takes place within forests and other ecosystems in order to prevent the extinction of not only the animals that depend on the habitats to live, but the trees that make up that environment. The implication being that over the next 100 years, if things do not improve, these ecosystems, the animals within them, and the plant life within them will cease to exist. And that I thought that was like a really interesting way to kind of approach the issue, that it wasn't like, yes, it is horrible that these big animals are being killed, but it impacts so many other things that aren't like overtly obvious. It impacts the way the trees develop. It impacts the biodiversity of these ecosystems. So something that like seemingly seems like not like overtly, like you wouldn't think about the trees when you're thinking about like a bear being murdered, but that's something that it does dramatically impact. In another article from Green Journal titled, "What Effect Does Overhunting Have on the Environment?" more context is provided for that problem. While hunting has been recorded across almost all human history, there is an issue surrounding the relationship between humanity and nature that is inherently disrespectful and exploitated within colonialism, as well as like our modern capitalistic society. Traditionally, hunting was intended for survival, as natives in areas throughout the world would only gather what they needed to live. During the Antiquity period before the Middle Ages, hunting evolved into a privilege for people in higher societal classes. This practice has contributed to the concept known as overhunting over the subsequent centuries. The cause is when individuals hunt outside of necessity, ultimately. When it's done as something, as it said, as a privilege, that it should be treated like a literal, like to take a life of something else is not something anyone should be taking lightly or be doing for fun. And it really is stemmed from this like class thing. So how are classes established? Money, finances. What's the cause? Capitalism. It all comes back.
Every time.
But it's like, it's one thing to hunt in order to feed oneself or clothe oneself, but it's what is taking place is like extends so far past that, and the overhunting of certain areas for sport, for like recreation, not necessity, and by companies in order to create an abundance to meet market expectations or achieve profit is what is doing the most damage. What we see as individuals hunting as a means of competition or for recreational purposes, and doing so with an inherently exploitive nature behind it. Without regulations surrounding this, we have an entire species that go extinct, or ecosystems that are decimated by poachers and big business. This also extends to deforestation, the removing of trees. We remove habitats. We remove the ecosystems in which animals need to survive. So in building
like the tigers.
No, yeah, exactly. And the things that like sometimes I feel like people don't realize impact this is the fact that we build cities and we build houses that are not sustainable. We build countless things that are not sustainable. We have landfills filled with garbage that is unsustainable, and things that are intentionally made poorly in order to encourage continued participation in capitalism. The result is the decimation of trees on our planet at a faster rate than they're able to be replenished. The same applies to animals who depend on these trees to live, and the animals that are destroyed by the textile industry and the exotic animal trade. There are so many ways that capitalism, colonialism, and imperialism has transformed the landscapes in an inherently exploitative way that has landed us where we are now. An example that immediately comes to mind is the extinction of the buffalo in the US, both as a means for hurting the native populations and like making it so they weren't able to fight back, but also for profit and excess. Like we literally destroy, like America specifically drove an entire species to be extinct. It's decimated the farming in the Midwest by overfarming it. That you literally can't farm there anymore. The drain and exploitation of natural resources for literal imaginary currency has destroyed this planet. So I think we should just not have money. But we knew that about me already. The article goes on to talk about the lasting implications of the ecosystem that we're destroying, as the trees and animals and biodiversity is what makes this planet hospitable for life. We need to help it in order to not destroy ourselves and everything else. Well, if we continue this way, continue to destroy, it is likely that the destruction of this ecosystem will destroy what allows for our own survival. In most cases, animals provide a service that makes the planet hospitable. Because we have biodiversity, we in turn can enjoy our agriculture systems, water sources, climate stability, blah, blah, blah. Oh my goodness. Climate stability and clean air. If you consider that each animal has a part in how this earth operates, you can see that extinction disrupts the entire system, leading to serious implications. Okay, so we can see this improve if we take the necessary steps to support the restoration of these ecosystems, and also just like operate in ways that do not inherently exploit and destroy them. I think the biggest piece is learning how to partner with our planet in ways that don't harm the ecosystem that we depend on for life. And Gabe had mentioned earlier when we were off the air, there's something that's like always missing in terms of a lot of the restoration attempts, because they don't consult native populations in this restoration process. Before colonialism and all that happened, there were people here who were actively taking care of the land and living symbiotically with the planet and like treating it like it's an actual thing instead of this like resource thing to like exploit and destroy. And like imperialism itself is what naturally led to that, because that was the whole thing. You went to a place to steal its resources and exploit its people. And then that has just inherently motivated what all exploration has been from anyone from the Western world. And it's just super gross. But with all that to say, there are things that you can do that are small enough that like, please just start the process. And the things that come so small from this, there's a list that I'm going to give you, but one of them is just building awareness and education and using the resources you have currently to do that. So following content creators who educate on these things, follow native creators that educate on these things, follow, like, support the things you want to see more of so that we can help save the planet, man. But the list goes on. The first one is increased regulations. We need to ensure that this area is not hunted in excess and that the trees are not harvested in excess. There needs to be regulations that prevent these things and strict rules for enforcing them. So like in the movie, when she's very upset that someone has murdered her dogs unjustly, and everyone's like, why are you so upset? They aren't people. Like, no, there should be consequences for brutally murdering animals. There should be consequences for hunting, like, excessively and for sport. Like, if you are not hunting to literally survive, you should not be able to hunt. Eliminating hunting as a sport would be a good start. In my opinion, we also need to change our society from operating exploitatively, both of our populations, but also of our planet, and the shift to a more wellness-focused structure and a more symbiotic relationship. Essentially, money in its current form needs to go for us to actually make these kinds of meaningful changes, or at least the way we operate within money and exploit money, or people for money. But the awareness and education is we need to educate our future generations of wildlife conservation and learn these things from the people who know, and living in a way that doesn't actively damage our planet. Many people don't realize that there are these issues at hand, or just ignorant of them. Providing people with practical next steps and using your platforms to educate others is a necessity and necessary step towards solving the problems. And the article also states that you should require hunters to learn about overhunting and the problems associated with it before they're even able to receive licenses, which I agree with. The last thing that's fairly easy to do is support ethical products. Put your money where what you want to see is. So that's why I was saying, Gabe, like you purchasing books that educate on eco horror and like eco centered thoughts, that is its own form of activism, because you're supporting the people who are doing the thing you want to see more of. As consumers, we need to back up what we want to see with our money. The article says each dollar is a vote, and that's true in a lot of ways within our current society. If we want the planet to change, we need to support organizations and companies doing that work, and people doing that work. This includes doing so with our food choices as well, when possible. So meatless Mondays and stuff, like, you know what I mean? Like just removing the amount of meat you consume can drastically impact the damage that is done to the planet. Obviously, this is more complicated when thinking of the reality of food deserts, poverty, and the other things that decrease access to these kinds of choices. So for that, I say, like, when possible, do that. When within the current system we're in, until that system is dismantled. Even decreasing the amount of like products that you use that are invasive, when we were talking about the bay, making sure that you're using things that if they are taken into the water through runoff, making sure that those things are not going to actively harm the ecosystems that exist in the water. And also, it's like, when you're exploring all these things, do what you can when you can, and recognize that because of the way our system is set up, there are instances that won't be possible, and ultimately we all need to remember who the real enemy is. And not attack each other. So if you have the means, we recommend donating to environmental organizations, supporting products that you consider good for the planet, and educate yourself ultimately, and use your time when you can to learn, sign petitions, advocate, and so on. We will always provide links and resources at the end in our show notes and what have you.
And we can also share a link to that TikTok you sent me of the just about like ecology and how we're trying to be conservationists, but we're ignoring the indigenous populations who are already doing that work, and not like in big studies considering like you should study how they've been doing it and like consider them part of the process. And because there is a respect there that we just never had. So we'll have those resources. And maybe I'll do a list of top 10 eco horror.
I think that would be great, honestly. Because, like, we ultimately, if we live in a capitalistic society, we need to put our money where our mouths are. If we have money. And if you don't, just do whatever you can in your current space. If that's donating your time, if that's literally just learning about stuff. And also, just like make sure you're getting information from the right people. So, like, if you notice that you're only hearing from people who work at big companies or a bunch of white people, maybe change the things you like on your tickety talks or consuming in your medias so that you get sent the other stuff because it exists and it's out there. It's my long rant. I didn't expect to go on a giant capitalistic rant, but like after I got started, I was like, oh my gosh, burn the money, burn it. So that's just that's where I'm at. Yeah, I agree, and because it always comes down to that, it really does. And I think what's interesting with this film was that it kind of weaves in that, because we do see like the fox farms and stuff, but it's clear that it's a societal thing, and that because society was saying it's okay, everyone else thought it was okay, and like especially seeing the indoctrination of the children into this like ideology of like we kill the animals and it's fun is a problem, and I think it was like really well told in that way. And I mean, it's like also it's like you're considering like the fact that that's like something that's very real that happens, like that most oppressive systems are indoctrination based, and that we witness a lot of that within our own education systems, religions systems, and etc. And I'm not saying like don't eat meat ever in your life. If you need it to survive, do that, but don't do more than that. You don't need to be murdering a lion because you're bored and because you have money. You don't need to be the owner of Jimmy John's on Instagram murdering a rhino. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to hunt things because you think it's cool and you want to wear your pants, your khaki pants, and go be rich people in other places when you don't need to.
Roasting khaki pants.
Khaki pants and cargo shorts need to be burned. They don't actually, but that's where I'm at.
Okay.
That's what I associate with the images of gross men standing next to dead animals is usually khaki pants or cargo shorts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Feels like inappropriate, but I do have the animal trials.
Yeah.
If we wanted to talk about them since we have time.
Yeah. I mean, it's still like horrific, and the people did that to animals, but then are going to go turn around and be like, they don't got souls, but we're going to try them.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like,
when they get murdered
how can
every
we
day.
have historically, like, put animals into court, but we're like, they're not people.
Yeah, and let people think we're crazy. I don't even care, because if anything, that just makes them underestimate us more.
Yeah, and then we murder.
I'm going to go yell at people in public. Let's go.
So I thought it was really exciting when in the film when she was like, I found these things on the internet of trials of animals, and I was like, I bet those are real, and that it wasn't make-believe, and it was real. She does cite, like, there was a pig that was hanged because it had strangled and defaced a baby in its cradle. And I found this, like, this fun article on History Revealed. It's just like, I doubt any of this is super great, but they say that multiple witnesses claimed that the pig let itself into the house and disfigured and ate the face and neck of the said child, so, like, as if it was on purpose. And the judge found the swine guilty and sentenced it to be hanged, or hung. There was a time when a man sexually assaulted a donkey, and the man was sentenced.
Well, that's good.
But they made it like the donkey had participated in the event. But one witness, a character witness for the popular donkey, said that the donkey was a most honest creature. And then the court judged that it had not participated in the master's crime of her own free will, which is nice. I thought it was really interesting. So there's, like, let me see, cockerel was burned to death, weevils, unknown sentence, but they damaged a vineyard. An elephant killed the handler, and it got death by hanging. And when you think about, like, how mistreated animals, specifically elephants, have been historically, I think we could do that. Rats destroyed.
Burn them down.
Rats destroyed a barley crop, but they were exonerated. Primate was a French spy, supposedly, and was hung. This one says, during the Napoleonic Wars, anything French was treated with suspicion in Britain. So after a French ship wrecked off the coast of Hartlepool and the sole survivor made it into town, the locals were concerned he was a spy, even though he was a monkey. And according to local legends, they had a trial, found it guilty, and hung him. But it could be not real. Yeah, there's 10 here. A cow pushes a woman over, sentenced to death. And then bear steals honey.
If you think about, like, okay, so person goes to zoo, falls in zoo place, zoo animal does zoo animal time. Harambe. They murder zoo animal. Like, they don't even get a trial. All I'm saying is like, we're all here saying divine intervention or whatever. We're seeking this whole ridiculousness and murdering things all the time. But the second they were like, oh yeah, we're going to do it back by accident. Like, not even.
Yeah, like, they just, like, fight back because, like, oh my god, like, you're in my space. I'm just reacting.
Let's destroy the forests and then be mad that the animals are coming into the cities.
Yeah. So, like, part of me wished that it was an animal. I was kind of hoping it was, like, some evolved animal that was.
Well, humans are, like, animals, so we're acting for.
You know what I meant.
I know what you meant. That's what I'm just saying.
Yeah. Anyway, this film was super fun. The reality of situation, not super fun. Yeah. Do what you can. Read up on things. Try to be more intentional. Meatless Mondays is super cool. But also just, like, being conscious of what we're putting into the earth and not doing things in excess just for kicks. That's not how you get power. That is a red flag. Yeah. So everyone out there, if you date someone and they say they're a hunter, like, drop them.
Yeah.
We need to make it uncool.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, it's like you think about like the areas in which like there's things you can do and there's things that you can't. So like there are times when this is going to happen and we're not going to like help each other by like messing somebody up because they use invasive hair products or something. You know what I mean? Where it's like
Yeah.
the real enemy is Jeff Bezos. The real
Yeah.
enemy is the billionaires that have been actively exploiting the planet this whole time. So like make sure, like obviously call people out when they do something wrong, but
But yeah, and I think
within
that's the big
reason.
thing too, is like we can
Poverty is a
reduce our
thing.
carbon footprint, but
Yeah.
there's a much bigger carbon footprint coming from the larger corporations. And that doesn't mean you can't do your part. It just means like when they're trying to make us feel bad, don't.
Yeah, like don't
and
listen to
realize
them.
that it's them we need to
literally
change.
exploitation and them manipulating you. So
Yeah, we need more sustainable practices all around, and incorporate different cultures and understandings of the environment into our studies and the way that we are trying to protect it to best serve it, right? Like, why not?
Yeah.
Anyway.
If you're a pawn of capitalism, deprogram yourself. If you're a pawn of
Yeah.
any oppressive system, deprogram yourself. It is the key to happiness. And also knowledge. So do those things if you can.
Yeah.
That's my little rant of the
Thank
day. My
you.
one ear is like super red compared to the other one, and I don't know why.
That's true.
It's warm. You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, that's all I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a short episode for a long film. But I feel like with, we have one more episode left in our eco horror and then we're going to change it up. But if you have any suggestions or thoughts about eco horror, if you're reading a really rad book that you want me to put onto my to be read on Goodreads, let me know. If there's a film that you think would be interesting to cover, like if we want to come back to this topic, which we probably will because there's always eco horror out there, let us know. And remember to like and subscribe. You can email us at theghouls@gmail.com and everywhere on social media. You can comment on things. We respond. We're small enough that it's not the worst thing in the world.
And also, like, if you're out here doing the work and you want your platform amplified, let us know. And if like we don't already know about you, we want to. So tell us so we can send people your way.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, don't get married.
Delete your kids. Hopefully our kids are radical too.
They are going to be radical.
Radical spawn.
Unless they want to like rebel against us, so they just become pawns.
It's like my biggest fear.
It's a kid who's like,
because you want to do the thing your parents not doing, but like when you're like, I'm like, oh no. What if they're like, Mom, capitalism's great, and I'm like, it's not. Who raised you? Me?
It couldn't be.
My spawn.
No. Well, I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so.
I think they're going to think the environment's great.
Your influence, my influence, Isaiah's influence, everyone else. It's gonna end up just fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, bye.